Baseball is the blood of America. It is sacred, our national love, our passion, our pastime. And now there's a new play about it, Lady of the Diamond, featured at the Studio Arena Theater. I'm happy to say it treats baseball with due respect. There are plenty of laughs in it as we follow the career of Connie Weaver, played by Buffalo native Christine Baranski, the Major League's first female ball player.
To my mother, Clara Kaczynski, whom I know is watching at home. Hi, Ma. And to my son Marty, who's been catching me since I was this high. No, since he was this high. Oh, hi, sweetheart. Thank you.
Moose Gratina here, folks. Say, how about Connie Weaver's winning the Sporting News Player of the Month award tonight?
Excellent choice, and I really believe, I know it may sound strange, but she keeps going the way she's going. She could cop the Rookie of the Year award.
Lady of the Diamond captures all the gibberish and traditions of baseball. That's why, if you see it, you'll get your money's worth of good, wholesome locker room humor. But the play does make a couple of errors. Christine Baranski, though a fine actress, fails in her attempt to talk with a Chicago accent. Instead, she ends up sounding like a debutante gone slummy. And in one important scene, the playwright destroys his credibility by using cheap homosexual characterizations that are pointless and offensive to both gays and straights. As for the issue of female equality in traditionally male sports, the play cops out by raising our expectations and then sending us to the showers with a sore arm. Despite the leading lady walking the bases and its playwright throwing some wild curves, Lady of the Diamond squeaked out a win thanks to its supporting cast and its Grand Slam baseball humor. I'm 2 on the Town critic-at-large, Don Glickstein. You're gonna say I'm unfair, and you're gonna say I'm a rotten person. But if you've ever seen the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, you can't help but make comparisons between that and the stage version of it now running at the Studio Arena Theater. To refresh your memory, Cuckoo is the story of McMurphy, a happy-go-lucky guy who's been in and out of jail for nothing terribly serious. McMurphy finds himself in a state mental hospital being studied by doctors to determine if he's a psychopath or just trying to find an easy way out of the county jail farm. He encounters a ward of assorted crazies, including an insensitive but perhaps well-meaning nurse named Ratched. We follow McMurphy as he undermines Nurse Ratched's authority and digs his own grave. The plot has a liberating ending involving another inmate. The movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest starred Jack Nicholson in a brilliant, maniacal, and moving performance filled with subtlety, humor, and desperation. The stage version, unfortunately, stars Robert Darnell, a journeyman actor who seems to have only one range of emotion, and that involves a loud bellow. Darnell's shallow performance is too bad, because the supporting cast is pretty good, and the director keeps the play moving at a sensitive pace. Here's what I mean.
Now you tell him that R.P. McMurphy is used to being the top dog in every situation, and if he is bound to be a loony, he is going to be the stomped down, dadgum biggest one of all. Settle by God, we ain't spilled a drop of blood.
If you haven't seen the movie, you'll enjoy the Studio Arena's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But if you did see the movie, and if you loved Jack Nicholson in it, the stage version is like a bad forgery of the Mona Lisa. From News Center 2 on the Town, I'm Don Glickstein.
Meet the world's most courageous skydiver.
Barco's nose for narcotics has made her
Courageous skydiver.
Barco's nose for narcotics has made her
Optimistic that the end is near. The hospital has made a new offer, and negotiators are still bargaining, ready for a long night.
Group Health will be presenting a new contract offer. I think we have lots of hard work ahead of us today and hard negotiations.
We are guardedly optimistic that this is a move, a good sign, a good sign.
Now, both sides are still far apart on a pay raise, and the union says giving nurses more say in patient care is still a critical bargaining point. There are 1,300 striking group health nurses in the greater Seattle area. It's a scary sort of way, but it's becoming routine.
Live from Seattle, this is King 5 News with Gene Enerson.
There's optimism tonight that an end to the group health nurses strike could be near. The two sides are negotiating at this hour for the third time this week. Earlier this afternoon, management presented a new contract to the 50-member nurses negotiating team. Since then, they've been shuttling in and out along with the federal mediators. Management says their offer reflects talks held Monday and Tuesday, and both sides sounded hopeful this could be the session which ends the 35-day-old strike.
The fact that we've talked 3 times now in the same week is reason for a little optimism, but as I said, we have a lot of hard work ahead of us.
We are guardedly optimistic that group health understands that nurses deserve to have a greater say, and we are hoping that, you know, things will move forward today, but we have no guarantees.
Group Health's 1,300 nurses walked off the job July 13th when they failed to get what they wanted in a new contract, namely higher wages, guaranteed hours, and more say in staffing levels. The last wage offer by Group Health was a 17.5% increase over 2 years. Nurses were demanding 24%.
And just ahead tonight, we'll update world and national news.
Now, Gary Justice, Susan Hutchison, Harry Wappler, and Wayne Cody. Live at 5. This is #1 Eyewitness News.
For the first time in 5 weeks, since 1,300 group health nurses went on strike, there is real optimism tonight about a possible contract settlement. Insiders say it's a good indicator when full negotiating teams for both sides have been in talks all day. Barbara Matt followed today's activities. Here's the update.
You might not see it on their faces, but there was optimism this afternoon when the federal mediator and negotiators for group health stepped into talks with nurses. After 5 weeks of picket lines and reduced hospital operations, insiders say the delicate mood between group health and striking nurses could make for long talks. Whether or not these talks end the 5-week-old strike, both nurses and group health have gotten by on contingency plans and a little imagination. But the strike is a major disruption. Group health still has only 1/3 its normal patient load at its 2 King County hospitals, even with staffing from the much disputed replacement nurses. Regular staff keep all but one of the cooperative's health care centers open for normal hours. Group health figures 16% of nurses crossed picket lines, but most remain with signs in hand. Union officials say nurses remain united because they anticipated the strike. Many saved money. Others have taken temporary jobs in nursing homes and other agencies. But the hope today is for a package everyone can agree on, or at least settle on.
I think that there's an understanding by both sides that there has to be a total package that encompasses all the outstanding issues.
I think it represents compromise, reflecting the discussions that both sides had and reflecting the changes in position and the willingness to compromise on both sides.
Both sides agree the signals are good. In Seattle, Barbara Matt, Cairo News.
But both sides also agree they're far apart on wages. Nurses are asking for a 24% wage increase. Group Health is offering a 17.5% increase. Striking nurses say they don't believe settlements between the Washington State Nurses Association and 7 of 9 local hospitals will impact their talks. Susan?
Well, for an update now on how the talks are shaping up, we go live to Jeff Burnside, who is standing by at the meeting site in downtown Seattle. Jeff?
Susan, here's what's happening right now. The nurses and the group health managers just came back from their first meal of the day at this late hour. They're back meeting amongst themselves now, the nurses caucusing with themselves and the group health managers among themselves. The federal mediator, who's sitting in the lobby, is going to soon be shuttling back and forth between those two groups, and at some point, to his determination, he'll call them back to face-to-face discussions again. The mediator agreed that both sides have the kind of attitude needed to at least make progress and perhaps come to some kind of a settlement. No quitting time has been set for ending these talks tonight, so as one could presume that as long as good progress is being made, the two sides will be right here talking. Susan?
Okay, Jeff, keep us up to date. Thank you.
You bet.
Another case of hepatitis A reported in Pierce County. A food service worker...
There soon may be an end to the 4-week-old group health nurses strike. Union representatives and group health management met at 10 this morning, and they are still negotiating at this hour. The two sides have reportedly exchanged proposals and counter-proposals. Union representatives say they were encouraged during talks yesterday when management moved on some issues, including nurse wages and staffing levels.
The number of reported...
Now, Aaron Brown with Harry Wappler weather at 11:05. Wayne Cody sports. Live from the newsroom in Seattle, this is Cairo News.
Good evening again. 5 weeks into the strike and 13 hours into the negotiations, there is cautious optimism that the group health nurses strike is going to end. The talking, and from what we can tell, it has been fairly serious talking, has been going on since 10 this morning, with new offers being exchanged and a team of federal mediators keeping the talks going. Reporter Stacy Sakamoto is standing by live with more on it all. Stacy?
Well, Aaron, each side is meeting separately right now. In fact, one of the federal mediators told me that both sides haven't met face-to-face since about 3:30 this afternoon. But they say that's not necessarily a bad sign. There is reason for optimism. They say that they've had 3 sessions this week for a total of 25 hours, and that's more than on any other given week since the strike started.
Well, what they're not saying, and they're not giving us much to go on here, are they? They're not telling us who's giving new offers to whom and how those offers are being received. They're just saying they're talking?
They are talking. They are saying, though, that Group Health did present a new offer today, wages and some other work conditions.
Stacy, thank you. Reporter Stacy Sakamoto, you know, 1,300 nurses are on strike for Group Health. They've been on strike for 5 weeks. Group Health is the largest health care provider in the region. And there are signs that a settlement is near in the strike that has hit four of the baby bell companies. A tentative agreement.
Live from Seattle, this is the Northwest's most watched late-night newscast with Don Porter, Tony Ventrella, and Jeff Renner. This is King 5 News.
Good evening. In the group health nurses strike, now nearly 6 weeks old, both sides have been in negotiations all day, and at this hour they're still talking. John Sandifer is in downtown Seattle where the talks are taking place. John, can you tell if they're getting anywhere?
Yeah, I can tell you that. It's 1,700 group health nurses, make that 1,300, with about a full bargaining unit of 50 down here as federal mediators go between management to labor, back to management again. They may not be able to agree totally so far on wages, hours, and working conditions, but there is some agreement between spokesmen for both groups that something significant may be happening down here by the virtue of the fact that they have now been here a total of 13 hours. And if they weren't making some progress in the talks, everybody would have gone home by now. This is significant also in the fact that if you combine the 7 hours they bargained on Monday, the 5 hours on Tuesday, along with 13 hours today, we have more total talks having taken place in the last 3 days than at any time previously in the strike. Now, the latest word I'm getting from at least the spokesman from the management side is that everybody is going to stay here until something happens. Either the talks completely break down or we reach a settlement. And that's the word we have from here. Don?
Okay, John, thanks very much. John Sandifer with an update from the talks in the group health nurses strike. Also tonight, a federal dragnet is...
Live from Seattle, this is King 5 News with Gene Enerson.
And good afternoon. Gene Enerson has the night off. An end to the long and sometimes bitter group health nurses strike is finally in sight. An 18-hour bargaining marathon resulted in a tentative agreement about 5 this morning. Janet Myers is standing by at Group Health's Central Hospital with the latest. Janet?
Joyce, the pickets, which have become a familiar sight outside group health facilities, are still here, and they will stay here until the agreement is ratified. As you say, it took an all-day, all-night bargaining session to reach the agreement, and as word spread to the rank and file, there was a collective sigh of relief.
I'm happy about it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to going back to work.
I was glad to hear that there was movement on almost all the issues and that there were some gains in the salary, although we haven't heard the details, and they're working.
Nurses say their strike served an important purpose, bringing to the forefront problems faced not only by their profession, but by the health industry in general. Some co-op members agreed.
As long as the nursing staff is kept strong and that this isn't allowed to divide the operation, that the co-op will be stronger for it.
The nurses struck July 13th, demanding higher pay, guaranteed hours, and more say in staffing decisions. What the agreement offers is not being made public, but sources say it calls for a 19% pay hike over 2 years. After 18 hours of talks, weary negotiators seemed satisfied.
The union compromised on its wage demands. At the same time, the cooperative reaffirmed that our nurses are important members of our healthcare team and deserve a fine offer.
They won this fight to improve nursing as a profession and thus improve their ability to deliver quality patient care to consumers. The nurses are the heroes of this struggle, and patients are the beneficiaries.
The two sides returned to the bargaining table this afternoon, trying to hammer out a back-to-work agreement. Now, the nurses are going to meet Sunday afternoon at 5 to vote on the contract. Their bargaining team is recommending passage. And again, though, until it is passed, the pickets here will stay in place. Joyce?
All right, Janet, thank you. In downtown Seattle, a 37-year-old man
Okay, there is other news. This is not the end of a breaking day here because the group health nurse strike might be over. Negotiators have reached a tentative agreement. The union says it's the best nursing contract in the state. The settlement came after a marathon bargaining session that ended at dawn. KOMO's Bob Thronson reports all the nurses have to do now is vote.
Strikers still walk the picket line, but it's really just for show as the nurses wait to vote Sunday on a new contract.
We're feeling really good that we've accomplished something with our strike.
It feels good, but I'm a basketball fan, and I remember the words that it's not over until the fat lady sings.
Union negotiators say they are recommending the contract unanimously.
We think it's a very good package. It's not perfect, but it is an excellent, excellent package because we've made progress on all issues that are of major concern to registered nurses.
The nurses will get a 19% raise over 2 years. That's a $2.50 an hour increase for a nurse with 5 years' experience at group health. And they will also have more voice in determining patient care. How much more, no one is saying. The walkout is now 5 weeks old, and 1,100 nurses had honored the picket lines. 200 others had ignored the walkout and reported for work. And the biggest job now will be to smooth over the hard feelings on both sides.
There's no doubt that a strike creates hard feelings, and it's going to be difficult at first. But our nurses are professionals, all of our employees are professionals, and they'll do their job, and we're united by a common goal, and that's to provide high-quality care to group health patients.
Group Health's 370,000 subscribers will be delighted, of course, to get their health care back on track. But more than likely, they're the ones who are going to wind up paying for this strike and the settlement through higher premiums. How much higher? A Group Health spokesman says it's too soon to tell. Bob Thronson, KOMO News 4, Capitol Hill.
It's hoped that outpatient clinics can be back to normal in a few days if that contract is approved, but Group Health was forced to move 2/3 of its patients out of its own hospitals and into others. For those people, it might be a week or more before their return to Group Health. The hospital says, in fact, some might simply stay right where they are to make it easier on the patients. Group Health says it was able to maintain regular hours at 19 of its 23 outpatient clinics. Group Health operates 3 hospitals in the Puget Sound area.
Hunters in
And in other news tonight, it's been a long 5 weeks for nurses on the picket lines, hospital administrators trying to fill vacant staff jobs, and group health patients who had to find care elsewhere. Well, now it may all be over. All that's left is the vote. Negotiators in the group health nurses strike reached a tentative contract agreement this morning after a bargaining session that went into the night. Monica Hart reports.
It took an all-night bargaining session, but shortly after 5 this morning at a Seattle hotel, negotiators reached a tentative contract agreement in the group health nurses strike. Before the sun had fully risen, word that the end of the strike might be near reached the picket lines.
Well, have you heard? Tentative agreement. Really? Yeah.
The nurses say they've been cautiously optimistic all week about a possible settlement. It's been a long haul. 5 weeks of haggling over wages and benefits, staffing levels, and guaranteed incomes. They agree to make better nurses than picketers, and so they're anxious to get back to work.
Happy. I'm ready to work. I'm ready to take care of patients.
Group health spokesman Don Glickstein echoes the nurses' enthusiasm to get back to business as usual.
We're very pleased that we have a tentative agreement. We're glad the strike appears to be over. We're looking forward to working with our nurses and all of our employees to continue to provide high-quality care to group health patients.
It's a bit premature to start celebrating. The strike isn't officially over until the nurses vote on the contract. But they toasted with coffee anyway on the picket lines this morning, hoping it will be one of their last.
The nurses say they won't miss the wind picking up off the water at 4 in the morning or the anxiety of watching their bills pile up. But they say the sacrifices are worth it if by striking they've made nursing a stronger, more attractive profession. Monica Hart, Cairo News.
And the nurses will vote to accept or reject that contract on Sunday. Narissa?
Well, there are still some unresolved issues, the so-called back-to-work issues. So a few negotiators are still meeting this evening trying to iron out those details. We have Stacy Sakamoto standing by now with a live report. Stacy, anything that could undo this tentative settlement?
Well, there's always a possibility that something could develop, some hitch. Negotiators have been meeting inside and back of me for about several hours now. They've been in there since about 1 o'clock this afternoon, and we're told they are making progress. Now, one of the major issues that is yet unresolved is how to phase back into the group health system these more than 1,000 striking nurses. The nurses, obviously, the union nurses, want the temporary replacements long gone by the time they get back to work. Another major issue, seniority. Another one, vacations. Nurses don't want to be penalized for being gone for work for 5 weeks now. These are still unresolved, and although they are anticipating coming to some agreement this evening, these are important issues that need to be resolved, need to be ratified before the nurses do go back to work.
And of course, they have to first vote, and that vote comes, I understand, on Sunday. Stacy Sakamoto, thank you very much for that report.
Last week, a double murder rocked the small community.
The 5-week-old group health nurses strike may be nearing an end tonight. The two sides announced a tentative agreement early this morning following an all-night bargaining session. Bill Benson with the update.
Group health nurses are still walking picket lines, but most of the determined expressions are beginning to give way to smiles.
We were willing to do whatever it took to get a good contract, and so it's nice to maybe see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that perhaps we'll be going back to work soon.
Well, I'm happy to hear there's been movement, and be looking forward to going to the meeting on Sunday.
The tentative agreement was announced following a nearly 20-hour bargaining session, which broke up at 5:30 this morning. The strike has at times been bitter, with both parties filing unfair labor practice charges against the other.
This was a real rocky road to get to where we are today, but I think probably both sides started at the same place, needing to recognize and value the nursing profession. We disagreed on how we were going to make that happen, but ultimately I think both sides are going to be able to say we reached those goals.
The union had been seeking a 26% wage increase over the 2 years of the contract. Management claimed 23% was the best it could do. For the time being, the two sides have agreed not to discuss specifics of the offer now on the table, but union officials say it is something they can live with.
It probably is the best contract for registered nurses in the state of Washington. It has some very, very innovative language in it, and essentially we think that nurses have been heard at group health. We've had a 5-week strike. We've made progress since the strike on both economic and non-economic issues.
If all goes according to plan, the nurses will be voting on the contract this Sunday evening. If approved, the employees are expected to be phased back into their jobs over the following 10 days. I'm Bill Benson reporting the 10 o'clock news.
Well, Kenny Mayne joins us a bit early now with sports.
You're watching Como TV4 in Seattle. Live from Seattle, this is Como News 4.
Some good news now. The group health strike is all but over. 1,300 nurses will vote Sunday on a new contract. The union says it has won the best agreement in the state. Como's Bob Thronson says a yes vote will end a 5-week-old walkout that has disrupted health care for almost 400,000 people.
Smiles and laughter are turning a somber group health picket line into a celebration.
We're happy. We're hoping that we'll be back with our patients and our co-workers soon. And we want to get out and vote on Sunday and see what it is that they've offered.
What group health is offering is a 19% raise over 2 years. For a nurse with 5 years experience, that's a $2.50 an hour increase. And the nurses will also have more voice in patient care. Just how much more, nobody is saying. But it's something the union wanted badly.
We think it's a very, very good tentative agreement. It probably is the best contract for registered nurses in the state of Washington.
The union did compromise on its wage demands, and at the same time the cooperative reaffirmed its recognition that group health nurses are good ones and they deserve a good offer.
Group health says its clinics should be able to offer normal hours almost immediately if the contract is approved. But getting hospital care back on track could take more than a week. During the strike, the co-op had to move out 2/3 of its hospital patients to other facilities. The agency says it may leave them there to make it easier on those patients. A group health spokesman tells us ultimately its members will pay for the strike and for the settlement. But he adds it's too early to say how their health care premiums might be affected. Bob Thronson, Como News 4, Capitol Hill.
Now, the nurses are going to vote Sunday night on that tentative agreement.
The story of, I'm sorry.
Now, Gary Justice and Aaron Brown, Steve Rabel Sports, and Harry Wappler Weather. Live from the newsroom in Seattle, this is Cairo News at 7.
After 5 weeks and a day, the group health nurses strike is almost over.
Well, have you heard? Tentative agreement. Really? Yeah.
Word reached the picket lines around sunrise after an all-night bargaining session. Some of the picketers toasted the occasion with cups of coffee, but it was really too early to celebrate. Some of the details are actually going back to work details that are still being discussed this evening. Details like what to do with the nurses hired to replace the strikers these past 5 weeks. If such details cannot be resolved, the contract will not be ratified. Now, assuming these back-to-work issues can be settled, the nurses are scheduled to vote on the contract on Sunday, which would put them back on the job early next week.
Live from Seattle, this is King 5 News with Gene Enerson, Mike James, Tony Ventrella, and Jeff Renner. This is the 6 o'clock report.
Joyce.
In other news now, the 5-week-old group health nurses strike is all but over tonight. Negotiators reached a tentative agreement early this morning, and the bargaining team will recommend a yes vote when the nurses vote this Sunday. Janet Myers reports.
Pickets still surround group health facilities, but as word of the tentative agreement spread, the mood among striking nurses improved.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really glad. I'm very unhappy not working. I like to work, and it's difficult not working.
Relief, too, among Group Health's 360,000 members.
The strike has been a long one, a protracted one. We've always had extremely good relationships with the nurses here when we've been in the facility, and it's nice to have it over.
Group Health's 1,300 nurses walked off the job July 13th, striking over increased pay, guaranteed hours, and staffing levels. Marathon negotiations overnight resulted in the tentative agreement. Contract details aren't being made public yet, but sources say the package calls for a 19% wage increase over 2 years. Nurses had demanded 24%. Both sides sound satisfied.
The union compromised on its wage demands. At the same time, the cooperative reaffirmed that our nurses are important members of our healthcare team and deserve a fine offer.
What we've been able to accomplish in these negotiations will enable Group Health to recruit and retain very qualified nurses at Group Health, and that the patients will be the winners in this because we will have conditions that will enable us to deliver quality patient care.
After a few hours of sleep, negotiators regrouped to work out details about how and when nurses will return to work. Nurses meet Sunday to vote on the agreement. Passage will bring an end to the first nurses' strike in this region since 1976. But until it passes, the pickets stay up. In Seattle, Janet Myers, King 5 News.
Live from KST Washington, this is the 10 o'clock news Saturday Report.
In other news, there is cautious optimism tonight for hundreds of Group Health nurses. Their strike could finally end tomorrow. Striking nurses say they're confident the tentative settlement the union is recommending is a good one, with a reported 19% pay hike. The 5-week-old strike has affected 1,300 nurses. While both sides aren't saying much, nurses still manning picket lines sound upbeat.
We've won on issues around wages, around income protection, around staffing issues, around respect and recognition.
What's the mood among the nurses right now?
I think people are feeling good. People are a little tired, but people are feeling good.
The nurses are scheduled to meet tomorrow night to vote on a new contract. Here's
Live from Seattle, this is King 5 News with David Curley, Joyce Taylor, Lou Gellis, and Rich Marion.
This time tomorrow, the Group Health nurses strike could be over. Although nurses walk the picket lines today, they vote tomorrow on a new contract. Union leaders say the tentative settlement represents the best nurses contract in the state, and they're confident it'll be passed. Union members are confident too. They want the strike to end because 5 weeks on the picket line have been expensive.
But it has been worth it because I think we have made gains, and we have made gains with each other, and we are incredibly strong going back, and we're going to make things, you know, continue to improve things at Group Health and in our profession in general.
The vote is set for 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Monica Hart and Brian Wood, John Collins weather, and Lou Guzzo commentary. Live from the newsroom in Seattle, this is the Sunday News Hour.
Good evening. Striking Group Health nurses are meeting at this hour, preparing to vote on a tentative contract agreement that would send them back to work after 5 weeks off the job. Nurses began arriving at a hotel near SeaTac Airport about an hour and a half ago. The union expects about 800 nurses to vote tonight once details of the offer are explained. The tentative agreement came on Friday following a marathon bargaining session. Negotiators are optimistic the nurses will ratify the contract, saying it adequately addresses the key issues: staffing, income and bargaining unit protection, and wages.
We made significant gains in all 4 of our key areas, and the negotiating team unanimously decided to accept this proposal, we feel that it is a significant victory and that the strike was very worth doing what we did.
So all that's left now is the vote. Cairo's Mary Farrell is standing by live now at the union meeting with the latest. Mary?
Brian, it will be probably a couple hours before those votes are tallied, but already there is a mood of excitement here, a mood of victory. The nurses are gathered behind closed doors, hearing the details of the contract. We can hear once in a while cheers ring out, applause from behind those doors. The nurses are already planning a party for tonight after the vote is counted. The contract itself calls for a 19% wage increase for nurses. It calls for improvements in staffing and also protection for hours and income. In fact, some hours previously cut back before the strike will be restored. Nurses will also have improved educational opportunities. The gains that nurses have made in this contract, they say, are especially important because it will help them to recruit quality people into the profession and to keep the good people that they already have. So the 5 weeks on the picket line, of course, were not easy, no picnic, but the sacrifices, nurses are saying tonight, the sacrifices were worthwhile. There's a real sense of pride here tonight, a real sense of accomplishment.
Mary, if the nurses do approve the contract, how soon could they be back on the job?
Well, some of the nurses will probably be back as soon as Tuesday morning. Probably the ones who work in the clinics will go back to work first. Those in the hospital may not be back for a week or two. Basically, some of the units in some of the hospitals have been totally shut down, so they have to wait for patients to come in and actually have some patients for nurses to care for.
All right. Thanks, Mary. Of course, if the vote total comes in, we'll be sharing back to you. Otherwise, we'll have it at 11 o'clock.
And it has been a long summer for the labor movement as unions everywhere try to regain the ground they lost when President Reagan fired all the striking air traffic controllers. That was in the late 70s. A decade later, strikers are playing hardball. Essex Porter looks at what, if anything, they've won.
It's been a summer in the trenches for unions in the Puget Sound region. Grocery workers led the way with an 81-day strike. Group health nurses have been out for 5 weeks. The carpenters working on major projects in the region walked out for 2 weeks. Unions have a lot of catching up to do. Labor consultant David Knowles is an associate professor at Seattle University.
Wage increases have been very, very modest. They have been less than the CPI on several occasions in the last 5 years or so. They increased about a little over 3% last year, 2.5% the year before, 1.9% the year before that.
The grocery workers won wage increases that averaged 3% for each of the next 3 years. They protected many of the gains they'd won over the years, but the long strike was so financially devastating, a third of the union members left to find jobs in other industries. Knowles says long strikes are rarely worth it, but strikes do remain a potent weapon.
So yes, I think strikes work. I think strikes are very effective. I think what really works is a threat of strikes.
The key for unions is to know how much leverage they have and to strike only when a quick victory is likely.
You can't go on strike just because it sounds well, and you can't go on strike just because the membership is crying out for strike. As a union official, you have to recommend strike not based upon solely the ethics of it, but how much chance do you have to produce a negative economic impact on management such that you force them back to the table in a relatively short period of time.
In our region, the workers with perhaps the most leverage work at Boeing. It's time to negotiate a new contract, and the company has a huge backlog of orders to fill. Negotiations have already begun at Boeing, and union members want a double-digit wage increase. They want that money to be part of their base wages, not a bonus, because bonuses don't count towards future wage increases.
If you don't keep up with the cost of living next year or the year after, you've lost it forever.
Knowles says most other workers will be lucky to get 4 or 5% wage hikes. In Seattle, Essex Porter, Cairo News.
Live from Seattle, this is King 5 News with David Curley, Joyce Taylor, Lou Gellis, and Rich Marion.
The group health nurses strike may be almost over. Nurses are meeting now to vote on the contract proposal from group health. Linda Kennedy is at the airport Hilton, where the nurses are looking over that offer. Linda?
Well, the nurses are still arriving. Their meeting was supposed to start at 5. It's running a little bit late. They come in, they sign up, they get their ballots, and then they'll go to another room where they'll hear the contract offer and they'll vote. This offer was unanimously recommended by the 50-member bargaining team. Union officials say it's a very broad-based team, and it really represents the rank and file of the union. So they are anticipating that the offer will be accepted, but it hasn't been easy getting here. The 1,300 nurses hit the picket line more than 5 weeks ago. They wanted guarantees there would be no cutbacks in staff or hours. Management said no. They wanted a 26% pay increase over the next 2 years. Management's wage package was only 16.5%. But nurses said there was more to the strike than dollars and cents. They wanted respect.
They're saying that they value their nurses. We're saying show us. They say that nurses are the heart of group health. We say show us.
Group Health was also trying to assure its 370,000 members they would be cared for during the strike. The co-op spent nearly $1 million in preparation.
And we have a great number of people that have responded to our ads for temporary nursing duties, and we'll be hiring them as appropriate to the patient load.
But in the ensuing weeks, discord escalated to animosity, and nurses said Group Health broke the law by recruiting and hiring strikebreakers from out of state. But last Friday, the two sides reached a tentative settlement.
I'm glad. Yeah, I'm really glad. I'm very unhappy not working. I like to work.
The pickets were up all weekend and would remain there until the deal was ratified. It'll be 2 or 3 hours before we know what the vote will be, but if the contract is ratified, nurses will start going back to work about Tuesday. Then they'll straggle in a staggered basis, but they will start back on Tuesday if the contract's ratified. Back to you, David.
All right, Linda, thank you very much. Maybe the nurses were late because they were watching the golf tournament. Lou Gellos with that and the rest of the day's sports up next.
Live from KST Washington, this is the 10 o'clock news Sunday report.
601 yes, just 5 no votes. That's the overwhelming message striking group health nurses are sending tonight. Just hours ago, the rank and file ratified the latest contract offer, making the vote appear as just a formality. But for these nurses, it means the end of 5 long weeks on picket lines. They waited for the best offer, and tonight it appears they got it.
We've been out on strike for 5 weeks. Nurses don't strike over nothing. We've made gains in all areas in which we went out on strike on originally, so we are very pleased with this settlement.
They have provided in this contract that a nurse has choices. She can float to another area, she can stay home without pay, or she can go into the hospital and work on things like quality assurance.
We felt that we had to make gains in wages and in staffing and income protection, and we made those gains.
What they got was a 19% pay hike over 2 years and more say in work scheduling. Let's see how.
Now, Monica Hart and Brian Wood with John Collins weather. Live from the newsroom in Seattle, this is Cairo Weekend News.
Good evening. After more than 5 weeks on the picket lines, the group health nurses strike is over tonight. Nurses say they won, claiming their new contract has implications far beyond their jobs at group health. Mary Farrell reports tonight.
That leaves no doubt nurses are happy with the contract, but the final tally makes it official. 601 for, only 5 against.
This agreement is the best contract in the state for nurses and provides an excellent recruitment and retention program, which was the union's primary goal.
Right. Yeah. The rank and file took their first look at the contract tonight after a tentative agreement was reached early Friday. The offer had the full support of the 50-member bargaining unit.
I really do think it's the best contract I've ever seen.
Wages will go up 19% over 2 years. Nurses will have more say in decisions about patient care and protection against cutbacks in hours and income. Another hard-fought prize, higher staffing levels.
That means that we won't work when there are too few nurses for too many patients.
Even as the first ballots were cast, emotions were running high. The new contract covers 1,300 group health RNs, but union members say it'll break ground for many more.
They addressed the issues of attitude towards nurses, support from the MDs, from the medical staff, from just all of management, their attitudes towards nurses in general, and salary.
Beyond the gains of this contract, many nurses feel an increased sense of personal satisfaction and power. 5 weeks on the picket line was no picnic, but now nurses have learned firsthand that they don't have to sit back and take it anymore. Mary Farrell, Cairo News.
And the first nurses should return to work come Tuesday.
Over 1,000 nurses go to the ballot box tonight to decide whether to end their 5-week strike against group health.
Well, striking nurses wanted more pay and they wanted more say, and it looks as though they've got it. Well, Como's John Larson joins us live near the airport Hilton, where the nurses are gathering to vote. John?
Well, Keith, at this very moment, they are behind closed doors being briefed on the details of that tentative agreement. Remember, they reached a tentative agreement Friday morning. They are now about to vote whether or not to accept that and end their 5-week-old strike. Now, we spoke with several of them just a few moments ago, and the mood was pretty upbeat. I think most are looking forward to ending the strike and going back to work.
We're very proud of the action that we've done. Nurses have been strong, and we've stood up for what we believed was important, and we feel good about what we've done.
19% over 2 years is the best wage increase for registered nurses in the state of Washington, and we've made progress on issues that have hurt recruitment and retention over the years, and we hope that with this contract we'll be able to really make progress, and that hopefully nurses will be attracted back into the profession and will stay in the profession.
Now, we should have some results back around 8 or 9 o'clock this evening. Of course, we'll let you know as soon as some results come in. Now, assuming they do ratify this agreement, it will turn up the heat on several other nursing groups around the state. 5 contracts expire in the Tacoma-Puyallup area, as well as contracts with state nurses, so we'll keep an eye on that. Keith, Emily?
John, let me ask you, this has been a long strike. Any idea how much this cost group health?
Well, I remember back around the 3rd week in July, there was a conservative estimate that it was costing the cooperative about $200,000 a week just to cover itself during the strike. I think that was a conservative estimate. You do a little arithmetic, 5 weeks, $200,000 a week, that's about $1 million. Undoubtedly, that bill will be passed on to the consumers.
Indeed, it most likely will. John Larson reporting live. Thank you.
Well, the health of our growing population of senior citizens has scientists looking towards preventative medicine. In tonight's senior report, Como's Doris Winkler tells how a simple change in your diet can help prevent cancer.
Watching Como TV4 in Seattle. Live from Seattle, this is Como News 4.
Good evening. The picket lines are down. Group health nurses are going back to work.
Tonight, union members voted overwhelmingly to end that walkout. Some nurses could be back on the job as early as Tuesday.
Ballots took the place of picket signs as 1,300 group health nurses brought an end to their 5.5-week walkout. They wanted better wages and working conditions, and they claim they got them. The RNs approved the contract by a wide margin.
601 yes to ratify the new contract, to 5 no.
Wages will go up 19% over the next 2 years. Nurses are guaranteed a 40-hour work week, and they'll have more say in decision-making and staffing.
We got a good contract. I think we're going to do all right. It was worth it.
We got a lot of support from the community, and I believe that group health really did take a good look at what we were out there for, and I think they responded very well.
The nurses claim they walked out on strike not for their own personal gains, but to improve the profession of nursing. They believe the new contract will make great strides in attracting new people into nursing.
Absolutely a recruitment and retention package. It makes this the best contract in the state of Washington. It gives nurses hope again that the profession has the status that it deserves, and it gives people the ability to provide quality patient care.
The nurses walked out July 13th and forced the healthcare cooperative to cut back many of its services and shift patients to other hospitals. The union says it is a force to be reckoned with.
Hey, hey,
I just talked with a group health executive who says they're happy with the settlement and they'll go out of their way to prevent any strike-related cost increases to consumers.
Well, George Argyris and the two Indianapolis men who want to buy the Seattle...
Well, take a look at this.
Strike opposed. Madonna has one. So does Cher. Even Mr. Rich and Famous himself, Robin Leach, has one. But you don't necessarily have to be one of the rich and famous to afford a personal trainer.
Actually, your average everyday person can probably benefit more from a private trainer because they're just new to exercise and they're coming into a gym being very...
Stairs. Big deal. Who cares about stairs? They get you from up to down or the other way around, but you never spend any time thinking about them. That is, unless you are the Stairmaster of Seattle.
Stairs are a metaphysical experience. You start in the darkness at the bottom of a stairway, which is shrouded by trees and covered by houses. And as you walk up, you ascend into the lightness and you see the world, a new world you can see forever.
Oh, brother. This guy must have climbed a little too high a few times. Actually, Don Glickstein is so passionate about stairs because he knows so much about them. He's certainly the only person we know of who has actually spent time researching our city's staircases.
Seattle has more than 500 staircases.
And Don has graciously consented to give us a tour of the most important staircases this city has to offer. But wait! Don't touch that dial. This is actually interesting, and it will change the way you feel about stair climbing forever. Maybe. We begin with the longest staircase, and as you probably guessed, it doesn't look like it gets a whole lot of foot traffic.
We're on the longest staircase in the city of Seattle. This is 228 steps up the east side of Pigeon Hill. Pigeon Hill, where's that, you ask?
Well, for those of you who want to try this staircase out, Pigeon Hill is near West Seattle. But wait, there is something else interesting about this staircase that the Stairmaster can tell us.
One of the neat things about this staircase is that it's made out of old trolley rails. You can see the old trolley rail right here where the handrail has broken away due to a winter storm.
Okay, Don, let's step up the tour.
Now we've moved over to the west slope of Queen Anne Hill, and this is one of my favorite spots because this is where the shortest staircase is. Ta-da! 2 steps.
Of course, 2 steps will never do for anyone who uses staircases to stay in shape.
This is a wonderful staircase for runners because it's long, it's scenic. You can look into people's yards because it goes past houses that can only be entered from the staircase. And then if you combine this staircase on Howe with the one right in the street over at Blaine, then you get a really long route that will really exhaust you and make your muscles build up.
Finally, the staircase Don deems most spectacular in the city.
I'm climbing the stairs to Upper Kinnear Park on Queen Anne Hill. It's probably the most scenic staircase in the city of Seattle because after a long, hard climb, you find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
How can you ever think of a set of stairs in the same way again?
By the way, Don says that he's not planning on investigating all 500 staircases in the city. He says that his knees just can't take it. Now, we're going to move on now with our FYI segment on health. And tonight we're going to talk about cosmetic surgery. Did you know that plastic surgery is...